Welcome back to the weekend wrap. No production, just my thoughts. As always, please like and subscribe and share with a friend, a colleague, a relative, an associate, an enemy, and anyone in between. I appreciate the views, the comments, the likes, the interaction. I've got to tell you guys though, I was this close to doing a community post and just saying, yeah, there weren't going to be no weekend wrap this week. A couple of reasons. I mean, look, I had a long travel up to Birmingham on Friday, had a very long night on Friday, had a long day Saturday, had a long night Saturday, and ultimately had a long travel back down to London. I'm shattered, so I won't even be getting gym tonight. That's, I was just watching Ade's Road to 175 pounds, episode 7. If you haven't seen it, make sure you watch that. And I was falling asleep while watching it. But I said, you know what? Since I don't actually have to do any editing or stuff for this, let's just do it and get through it. Part of the reason I also weren't going to do it yet was because I haven't watched the Frank Warren card, the Queensberry card from Friday night. I was supposed to be there, as a lot of you know, but accreditations got mixed up, so I didn't actually get my accreditation for it. That being said, it's fine. I've got it recorded, so I will watch it. I have to watch it for Tuesday's breakdown show anyway. From what I've heard from obviously the people I know who was there, it was a pretty good card. I do know that my girl Raven Chapman, she got her victory over Lily Dos Santos Furtado. I know Nathaniel Collins got the knockout over Hamza Raza. I haven't seen the or is it Raza Hamza, one or the other. I haven't seen the fight or the knockout yet, but I know I did predict that, and I know there was a majority decision draw between Dennis McCann and Neil Baluta in the main event. So I'm looking forward to watching it, and I will give thoughts in a later video or just watch the breakdown on Tuesday. Going over to the Matchroom card. Now, usually when I come back from those shows, or previously when I used to come back from those shows, I had like footage and stuff to sort of show videos and chats or whatever. This one I didn't actually take any. And to a degree, I'm actually kind of happy I didn't, because I was just watching the fights as they appeared. I wasn't doing any filming. I wasn't thinking about who I can get a couple minutes to chat with or whatnot. Go through the card real quick, and then I'll just give you my overall thoughts about the rest of the event, some of the stuff, and then a few of the topics that's been going on this week, as that is a bit more what these weekend wraps are going to be moving forward. So before the bell, I watched from the halfway through the second fight onwards. Names I'm not going to remember. I'll be honest, there was some good performances. I know there's a couple of debuts that took place. There was a few people that kind of... there was the guy, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but I know he's got the nickname Spider. Obviously, a bit triggering because, Craig Spider Richards is the only Spider that I acknowledge within the world of boxing, so they might have to have a catchweight fight to scrap for that name. But all jokes aside, I know he's supported by the rapper JK, and he was pretty good. He came out, I think he got the victory in the first round stoppage, which was pretty cool. Big ups to him. I think his name's Ibrahim something. I could be totally wrong with that. I'll actually, no, I won't, because there's no production. I'll correct it in a future video. Anyway, main card was it was kicked off by Jordan Flynn versus Kane Baker 2. Now, their first fight was, a nice little nip and tuck fight whereby Jordan Flynn got the victory, but a lot of people believe that Kane Baker won that one. So in my prediction video, I did say that I felt like Jordan Flynn would be able to make the adjustments to make it a bit more of an easier fight to win. He knows what Kane Baker's going to do. You just got to, tailor your game plan to work around that. Well, in this one, Kane Baker was actually a lot more effective to the body than I thought he would be. He got knocked down, I think, in the second round. Whereby, so you thought, oh, okay, Jordan Flynn's figured it out. But I remember I was sitting next to October Red at one point, and Josh Hart. So if Josh, if you're watching, shout out to you. October, you know. Anyway, and I was saying that Jordan is doing better, but he already looked like he was starting to slow down from the second round. And I had said, like, that doesn't bode well to me. I think that, you know, and the fact this is a 10 rounder and not an 8 rounder, that could spell trouble towards the back end of the fight. Lo and behold, it kind of did. So I said, oh, well, I think he's just ahead because of the knockdown. So Jordan, so Kane Baker's ultimately going to have to get a knockdown himself, or he's going to have to get a knockout to win this fight. Well, luckily, he didn't actually need either, because Jordan Flynn got a point deduction. I'm not sure what it was for. I think it was for holding or for clinching, excessive clinching. But ultimately, the fight ended in it was a referee-only scorecard, so it wasn't judges, but the referee scored it as a draw, 94-94, so 5 rounds apiece with 1 point deduction on either side. Funnily enough, as the fight was going on, especially as soon as that point came off of Jordan Flynn's, I looked at both Josh and October. I said, this is going to be a draw. They weren't particularly sure. And then as soon as it happened, 94, they both looked at me and goes, raw, okay, you done it again. I kind of, yeah. The fight was entertaining. I said to them, look, it's going to be a draw. They're going to have to run it back. That's what happened. I don't know when they're going to run it back, if they do, but it was an entertaining fight, and I'd certainly watch a third one. You know, it's one guy with losses in the double digits, but one guy who's still pretty much a ranked novice in the pro game, and you just see sometimes the styles just gel and come together, and those two just may be each other's Achilles heel at this point. What was the second fight on that card? I think it was Khalil Majid against somebody whose name I don't remember, unfortunately. I don't particularly, I can't remember anything about that fight, if I'm totally honest. So I'll move on. Apologies. I know he got the victory. I think, if I'm correct, the referee might have waved that fight off, and the opponent was disgusted because he was still fine. I think it was like in the last round or something, and the ref jumped in and said, oh, you've had enough. But he's like, there's no issue here, I'm fine, like I'm still I think it was Majid versus Gonji or something like that. Apologies, like I said, I'm tired. Moving on from there, it was Solomon Dacus versus Chris Thompson. It was a pretty decent scrap. Chris Thompson, southpaw, seemed strong, durable, had a much bigger KO ratio than Solomon did, so maybe that was something that Solomon was a little bit wary of. It looked like he had the measure of him at the start of the fight, but then he's almost like he started getting desperate towards the end, and he just started trying to launch backhands from the back of the arena and think they was just gonna land, and it just wasn't working. He wasn't setting anything up. It just seemed like, even though he was comfortably winning the majority of the rounds, it looked like he ran out of ideas pretty early in the fight. Now, as far as I'm aware, he only had 2 weeks to prepare for the guy, so while you can't necessarily be too critical of that, I've already given my opinions on Dacus and where he's going to go. One thing I will say, physically, he looks a lot better. He looks a lot more maturated as a heavyweight now, but I don't see anything substantial there. So he went points again. Shout out to Chris Thompson, though. He had a very underrated defense for Solomon's right hooks that he was throwing. Like he had his hands up every time he was countering. His hands were always quite close to the guards. Every time Solomon was throwing around the side, they was always getting blocked and countered on the hand and the forearm, which it was consistently he was keeping his guard up in the defensive stance. So big up to Chris Thompson. But yeah, Dacus moves forward again, and we'll see what happens with him in his next fight, whenever that one may be. Now, moving on to without question the fight of the night, which was Cyrus Pattinson against Conor Walker. Now I have to apologize to Conor because I do remember his fight against Antwi, but I forgot that he had that fight. So when I was doing basis picks, I didn't even remember who was, basically who he was, and I saw it's just a guy in there to make Cyrus Pattinson look good ultimately. And yeah, I just just basically dismissed him out of hand. That was wrong. I got that one horrendously wrong, but the fight itself was just an amazing fight. It was Southpaw versus Orthodox, but it's weird because neither guy has necessarily got the biggest power punch of the two, but you could tell that Conor Walker just seemed every time he threw something, it just happened to, it's like it was just straight to the target. It connected clean. His shots were a lot shorter, they were a lot crisper, and when they was exchanging in the pocket, his one would just seem to land just that split second before Cyrus's, which obviously was meaning that even though they were both getting caught, one had a bit more of the double impact than the other. There was 2 knockdowns for Patterson where there was questionable whether they were actual knockdowns, but there was definitely one that was a heavy knockdown, and he got up surprisingly, to be honest. But there was also a couple of times where he had Conor Walker looking like he was on weary legs, like he was on rubbery legs about to go down, and then all of a sudden it's just a salvo that comes back the other way, or one quick counter punch and just changes the tide of the entire fight. Yeah, it was a great fight to watch. And it was stopped at the end of the 8th round in the corner, by the corner after the 3 knockdowns. And it's funny because I had said to I think I had said to October and Josh, who was next to me, look, if they're gonna there's no point, I think they're gonna call it off. I said if they got anything, they'll throw in the towel now, because there's absolutely no way he can win. He hasn't got the power to knock out Conor Walker. They didn't have it from round 1. He doesn't seem to have it now, and he's so far down on the cards. There's no point in carrying on, because he's not going to be able to win this particular bout. All he's really going to be able to do is just see it out, but it's going to take more of a beating. You might as well just save him now for another day. And lo and behold, about 2 minutes after I said that, they stopped it in the corner. So yeah, I guess I got to applaud them for that. Then obviously we got the main event, which was Galal Yafai and Tommy Frank. Went 1 round, about 90 seconds. I don't really need to speak on it. It was it was a soft touch, soft matchup, to be honest. Don't know the full reasons behind it. From what I understand, Jay Harris said he wasn't interested in that fight unless he wanted to fight for a European title. That's what he was interested in. So now that I think the European is being vacated, he said, well, he'll fight Galal for the European, but he wasn't prepared to fight him for nothing, basically. So now I think that will be the one that they make next. So yeah, overall, the card itself, it was entertaining, it was enjoyable. At the end, I mean, look, I had my equipment. I was thinking about doing, a couple of interviews. There was a few people around. Shout out to Chef Clark, he was there on comms as well. Sonny Edwards was there, Barry Jones. Ade, shout out to Ade. I saw him, he did quite a bit of media. I was tempted to go and have a chat with him, but I know he was tired, and obviously he's drained from doing all of his stuff. So there was a couple people that went interviews. I said, you know what, Ade, speak to them. I'll call you in it, and we'll set something else up, because we've got a lot of stuff that we need to chat about. Then I went backstage, and there was Galal was there, and Eddie was there, and Frank was there. I was just then I just started hearing some of the questions that people was asking, and I'm like, okay, so they're just asking the same things over and over again. I'm not even going to be able to ask the relevant questions that I want to ask, because I don't necessarily care about what he thinks of Frank Warren's comments or blah blah blah, although some of that stuff is funny. But I had questions I wanted to ask, but after all of them, the amount of time I probably would have got to have that conversation probably would have been 3 minutes, 4 minutes. The questions wouldn't have been able to be answered in that time. So I thought, forget this. So I left. walk back to my hotel. I decided to walk instead of drive, get some steps in, get some exercise, because I knew I wouldn't be getting huge amounts over the weekend. But yeah, came home and I've started to see all the videos now, all the other comments and that. Yeah, so I guess now got to really just drill down on this whole Alycia Baumgardner thing. And not just her, but one thing I did see from the Friday night stuff, obviously Frank Warren said that his concern is that, as far as he's aware, drug-free sport don't have the same testing protocols as UCAD and VADA do. They don't test for certain substances. Now, one thing I would like to know, first of all, is like basically where that information has come from, what he knows about sort of their protocols and all that, purely because I want to know, okay, so who are these people? I know that they test in a lot of American sports, and obviously they're an American agency. But yeah, where did that information come from? Who has he verified that with, being that he doesn't put on events in the US? Just so I can obviously do my due diligence as well and be a bit more informed on what's going on there. He also said that as far as he was aware, Alycia Baumgardner was about to go sign with Jake Paul, which I guess in theory would make sense, because if she wants a Amanda Serrano fight, it's the quickest way to do it, both of them being the most valuable promotions. I know that Eddie Hearn responded and basically said that ultimately, well, she's got a contract until April 2024. So there's, even if she was quote unquote leaving, I mean, she's not leaving for almost a year. So doesn't really, that's not really anything you need to necessarily worry about. Outside of that, he's got first and last, which basically means rights of refusal. So any deal that she acquires next or goes to try and make for herself, he has matching rights. He can choose to match it or not, and if he chooses to match the deal, then she ends up re-signing with Matchroom for that deal anyway. And if she goes somewhere and does like a one fight or tries to do a one fight agreement, they've got the right to be first and last on that particular signing. So ultimately she wasn't, on that one and done and I'm out of there situation. So that in itself, it's like, okay, well, I don't know obviously if that's something that Frank knows more than he's letting on, or whether Eddie's maybe spinning narratives somewhere in there. It's interesting, but either way, it's like I really want more to be done about this whole situation. First of all, the whole 9-day things, I think what they call it is it's a chain of control. This is something I actually saw on Twitter, so I need to do more research on it. But apparently, so when the sample is itself collected, it may not get tested. I think it makes it to the lab within 48 hours of being taken, but it may not be tested by them because it goes from one person, who I guess is the collector, to maybe a distributor or something like of that. Then it will go there and it's processed it within records, scanned in, sat, then it goes to another place and then it's split apart from the the barcode and the actual name, randomized, and then I guess from there is put into a batch with I guess the scientists or whomever is actually doing the testing, and they have obviously their list and they have to go through in whatever order they get it to make sure that they're completing everything in due process and blah blah blah. And I would assume that that's basically what the chain of control would be. So even if it hasn't been tested for 9 days, I'm assuming that that's because it's from one hand to one hand to one hand. Now, I don't know if that is standard across the board. I don't know if that is only with the voluntary agencies. That's something I'd actually like to do a bit more research on, to have some knowledge of it. But I'm just throwing a hypothetical idea out there. That being said, I know that there's probably gonna be some kind of legal looking into, okay, well, why did it take 9 days to be tested in the first place? Is that standard protocol? Does that happen with VADA? Does that happen with USADA? Does it happen with UCAD? You know, and that's something that kind of needs to be looked at. Outside of all of that, well, we had news that Zolani Tete has been banned for 4 years now. Technically, it's now 3 years with time served, as obviously his issue with Jason Cunningham happened last year. So he's already basically had a year out of the ring for that. He's now got an official another 3 years. I think he's 35 at the moment. So by the time he would come back, supposedly, that's 38. The question that I never heard asked to Frank Warren regarding the Tete thing, because to be fair, obviously he said, well, look, we've been made aware of the findings. We will await the BBBOC's decisions or whatever when it first took place. But as I think Eddie had alluded to, well, ask Frank, are his fighters being tested? And then he's like, yeah, well, they do the post UCAD testing, which, yeah, okay, cool. But are they being tested before that? Are they being tested in camp? Like, are they being tested by UCAD before the test, or is it just strictly afterwards? Like, what is the situation? And I would actually like to know, because did Zolani Tete have any testing prior to the fight? And if he didn't, why didn't he? Like, because as they said, if everyone's making up a big issue about Alycia Baumgardner having a test on the 12th, which hasn't even been looked at until the 21st, the test results don't come back until the 10th of August, and they don't get reported until the 12th, then ultimately, so a whole month's gone by there. She's already been and fought. If she's dirty, the damage has been done, right? So what's the point? But then if that's the case, well, if you're saying that it's poor for that test to be conducted prior to, well, then why are we caring about post-match testing if you're not going to do any testing prior to the event to begin with? It just doesn't really make sense. So to me, it's like, if you're gonna, I guess, be on the high horse about processes and whatnot, I feel like the processes need to be followed by everyone. So it is a fair question that Eddie Hearn asked. And this isn't about Eddie or whatever, because I've already heard a few things this week where I'm like, I don't really know if I like where you're kind of going with that one. But ultimately, I'll put that to one side, because at the moment, it's just a case of, okay, I want boxing news. I'm sure Rob and Andy will. Boxing King Media, Raz, I'm sure he will do it. Ask Frank, how many people are being tested on his shows? Ask Ben, is testing taking place on your shows? Like, not just the main events, like, and not just UCAD. Like, what additional testing, or are they in 12-week testing with UCAD prior to their fights? Just ask them. Wasserman as well. Like, let's find out who's actually doing the testing and who isn't, because we already know that Al Heyman, for instance, sent in a written request to VADA to not publish his fighters' results like in public. Like, normally they would announce on Twitter and places when people have gone into this and they've cleared, but he's like, no, I don't want you guys to do that. So, but there will be some that will still at least be testing. Let's just find out. Frank, are your people testing? Ben, are your people testing? Kala, are your people testing? And just find out, okay, what's the disparity and how much, and basically where the problem is and where we need to get to there. And obviously, okay, it's also unsurprising that this whole Alycia Baumgardner thing made its way to TalkSport, Matchroom. Of course, it would make sense. But I want to hear what they have to say about, if all things being equal, let's hear what they got to say about Zolani. And that's what I want to find out now. What's their thoughts on that particular situation, especially if it comes to light that he wasn't actually tested before the fight, it was only post-fight testing. Then you have to ask, well, was that good enough on the part of that promoter? But anyway, let me leave it there because I'm probably rambling right now. I'm really tired. I don't know what else I really want to say. Overall, it was a good weekend. I've still got some stuff to watch, and before I do that, I'm going to go and have a nap, which I probably shouldn't because it's going to mess up my timeline for later, but I don't care. I'm tired. But yeah, thank you lot very much for watching. Leave your comments down below, let me know what you think, and I will catch you on the next video. I might even do it when I wake up and drop it first thing in the morning, but we'll see. But for right now, have a good one. Peace.